Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, where we sit down and talk with interesting professional guitar players, uncover their stories, and discover what makes them tick. If you love guitar, music, and the backstory of people's lives, stick around. You're in the right place. Hi, this is Craig. Just want to let you know you can now advertise here on Everyone Loves Guitar podcast. For more information, go to everyonelovesguitar.com/advertise. That's everyonelovesguitar.com/advertise. Hey, everybody, this is Craig Garber, and welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar. I've got a really interesting guest and a great guitar player and a really cool guy. We're with Jon Stickley today, and I want to thank our mutual friend, Chris Critter Eldridge, for hooking us up. Jon, if you haven't heard him, he's got a really unique thing going. He combines traditional bluegrass with Americana, but his trio is not common. It's Jon on guitar along with a violinist and a drummer, which like you never see drummers in bluegrass. He grew up in Durham, North Carolina with a punk rock heart and a bluegrass soul, and being in that college town, it offered him the landscape to make this kind of these two different musical worlds come together of like, sort of punk and bluegrass. He got into bluegrass later than most, and he actually didn't start his first bluegrass band until after he finished high school. In 2012, after playing in several regional bluegrass groups, Jon went out on his own, and originally the Jon Stickley Band consisted of a more traditional bluegrass lineup. But, this is really cool how fate sort of tells you what to do sometimes. Last minute call for a gig. I guess the band members, Jon, is this correct? You didn't have a bass player or something like that? And so you said, hey, I got a fiddle player and a drummer, and that'll do.
Yep. We had the fiddle and the drums, and then we ended up switching out bass for we had the violinist. I was on guitar, and we switched out the bass for drums at the last minute. First time we did that lineup, and it was something just kind of clicked there. I mean, always been pretty open-minded towards new things like that. So,
man, and I give you the credit for not being afraid to follow through with that, because, when you're the only person doing something, when you're doing something new, it takes balls, man. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
And the Jon Stickley Trio has released 4 albums so far, but I think you have 1 or 2 solo albums on your own as well, right?
Yeah, I've got 2 out. Mm-hmm.
That's great. And 2019, is it safe to say you'll be in the studio working on another one?
I hope so.
Awesome, yep. Man. Very cool.
Maybe even late fall 2019 potential release.
Awesome. There you go. You heard it here. Man, thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate your time.
Glad to be here.
So, like, I sort of wrote this down. I don't know how accurate it is, but it was like the first thing I think of. Your music is like, Wolfpack, those guys?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So you're like Wolfpack and bluegrass. I mean, because like your guitar playing is excellent. It's grooving for sure. And I was curious, so let's say over the last, let's say 4 or 5 years, how audiences have come to find your music and how they're represented at your shows. Like, do you see more of a one crowd or another? Is it more of a bluegrass crowd? Is it more of a funk or, new wave or punk crowd?
It's definitely kind of evolved over time. At first we came out of the bluegrass, jamgrass scene, which is a really amazing, well-defined, supportive, and like growing scene of these festivals. Telluride Bluegrass was one of the first ones, and Rocky Grass, of course, out in Colorado, and then Merle Fest, and all these like Americana kind of bluegrass style festivals are one of the main parts of like this style of music. So when I went to my first festival just as a fan, that's what kind of got me hooked. I was like, I want to go to as many of these as possible. And that's what got me playing enough music to actually kind of start wanting to practice more and going to more jams, and growing as a musician was just wanting to be a part of the jams that take place at these festivals. So then we put bands together, ended up playing some of the festivals, got hired for the festivals, and that scene is kind of the hub for a lot of early, bands getting their start. And, so that was our crowd at first, was the kind of Americana, bluegrass, jamgrass festival crowd. And we were always kind of one of the like weirder, more outside bands still. Yeah. And so, then you get the exposure through that, you make some records and it gets out in front of a little more people. And then you finally meet someone at your show who's like, man, I've never heard anything like you guys. You remind me of the Dixie Dregs and Mahe Vishnu Orchestra.
That's really lofty.
That in years, and that's when I started hearing about these bands like that. I didn't know who those bands were. We were just a weird Americana bluegrass project that is now slowly spreading into other areas, kind of like that.
That must have felt really good when you start going to concerts and jam fests, and man, I'd like to play there, and then you're actually playing there. How did you feel? Like, what was the first one you did, and how did that feel?
First one, golly, what did we play first? Probably was Springfest down in Swanee, like we talked about, Live Oak, Florida. That was the first big one where I had played there with some bands. So, just going out, like, as a person who wanted to just go to as many festivals as possible, to get paid for your first one is huge. Just like getting money for our first gig we ever played. I got $40 and I was like, I'm sold, man. If I
That's awesome
to do this, like, every in college. And, so that was life changing. And then, you eventually play a festival. You're like, man, I tell people a lot, they're like, what are your dreams? And I'm like, man, I think, I'm living one of my dreams right now, which was just to play festivals for money.
That's so cool.
I would want to be going there anyway. So to be getting paid to do it. You get busy enough, it starts to be a little bit of more of a grind than the actual, when we first start playing the festivals, we would camp every night of the festival, 4 nights in a row, do our show, have fun. But as momentum builds and stuff, and your show needs to be a little bit better, you realize you can't really party all night before going to do that. So the festival experience has changed a lot, but just being involved with the scene and everything that's based around it has been a total dream come true, for sure.
Dude, and really congratulations, because you're a young guy to have done that and you're living your dreams already. That's not something most people ever get to do. So pat on the back to you, Jon.
And you got to keep reminding yourself that, you know, like, wait, what am I doing? Oh, I'm living the dream. Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's good that you're smart enough and to be aware of that, man. So
yeah.
What got you turned on to bluegrass in the first place? In your bio, you said you started playing it later than most, but I think it's kind of a misnomer, and because most people start playing bluegrass when they're like 3, because their parents or somebody has a family band. So that's like one of those genres that you grow up with real young.
Yeah, it is for a lot of people, and I was lucky when I did get into it, or in college or high school. Just basically, when I got into it, I started kind of having that experience of being mentored by older people. Like, went to my first jam, and there's a lot of old folks there. It really reminded me of my grandparents. It was like I was playing with my grandparents. That was cool because I love my grandparents. And so it was, back up a little bit, grew up in Durham, the suburban neighborhood. And all our friends in the neighborhood, we just started making our own little bands as soon as we heard Nirvana on MTV, around 1993 or whenever it was, 2, 3. And we had a rap group too. We just we did music in our neighborhood. We had a roller hockey team, played a little lacrosse, hide and seek, and then we just made bands. And then we got my parents' camcorder and we started making music videos and stuff like that. And we just all played the different instruments. I played drums, guitar. We did our band was a little rotational thing where we'd all play all the instruments. And then just that slowly turned into a pretty fairly successful kind of local indie rock band in the pretty much Chapel Hill college music scene. And it was called Strunk and White.
Strunk and White.
That's it. Strunk and White is a book.
Yeah, it's a book about English or writing, isn't it?
Yeah. And so we were in school and we were messing with all this stuff, but the pun is strunken. The word is strunken.
Right.
White.
Strunk and White.
And,
yeah.
So it's a pun on that. And then we, released some records and we're on a record label, and this all happened before we graduated high school.
How'd you release records? Like you got signed to a label?
Yeah, we were on a small label called Route 14.
That's so cool, man.
Got our records, and it was a really vibrant scene in Chapel Hill in the 90s. Polvo, Archers of Loaf, Superchunk.
Yeah.
The whole Merge Records scene was happening, and we were just like some of the young kids that were kind of involved.
That is so cool. So like music has always been a source of fun for you. It sounds like even at a really young age.
Yeah. And before that, I was like involved in music in church, and I was a choir boy in the North Carolina Boys Choir. I mean, music just, for me, it was fun. I ended up doing a lot of things that other kids' parents were forcing them to do. I was like doing for fun.
Okay. That's great, man.
And then actually, when I was in elementary school into middle school, I did the boys choir thing, and we actually went on a couple tours, and we went up to Toronto and stuff via bus and stayed with host families and played in churches. And my wife was like, dude, I think that might be when you realized you started liking touring. I was like, you're so right. That was some of the most fun ever.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
I even forgot that we even did that, but like now we're doing the same thing, staying with host families.
That's really cool. So
meeting people. I mean, it's pretty cool.
So you're a great example, really, in my eyes, of like a modern. You didn't, a lot of people today have had to adjust because the music scene has changed for them. Guys my age, and even guys 10 years younger than me, right? You grew up with the music scene being this way, and you're thriving in it. So you're a great example of what a modern musician is, to be honest with you.
Cool.
Yeah. What made you fuse like two genres together? That is really interesting.
Yeah. So that'd be like the music of the trio is kind of like a fusion thing. That was another interview I did with Premier Guitar. Jason went real deep. We were talking like forever about my early bands, and one of them was my first bluegrass band was with my brother, my best friend Andy, and who played banjo, kind of introduced me to all the bluegrass music, and Ian, and we were so fledgling at it. We were just kind of learning to pick. We knew some traditional bluegrass tunes that we had learned, and then Andy started writing songs right away. So he was coming up with originals, and then one of the first things I thought I was like, dude, we should play Dean's Dream by the Dead Milkmen. Like, that's one of my favorite songs. Like, why don't we just jam that? And they're like, okay. So we did that and put it on our little CD we made. And he was like, dude, that was the first time you crossed genres like that. You're doing like bluegrass punk. And I think with bluegrass, it's like with me, I got so obsessed with it, as you have to. Like if you want to learn jazz or you want to learn bluegrass, it's like if you just say, hey, I want to learn jazz, you go try to do it, you realize it takes a lot of passion and commitment. And you basically have to live for it to get anywhere close to being able to even do it. And so that bluegrass is what kind of grabbed me and made me want to like work really hard to get good at it, because it's a really refined, there's a lot of nuance to it. And I could hear that. And I was like, that something about it just grabbed me. And I think it had elements of all the music I listened to growing up, the groove of like 90s rap and beats and the energy of punk rock and the F-it kind of attitude of Nirvana and Kurt Cobain. I mean, it just something about it was so like anti everything else, but still really strong and powerful. So it hooked me. And then I went 100% trying to play bluegrass guitar for 10, 12 years is all I thought about. And it wasn't until the trio kind of started playing that I started having to write material. And that's when my brain was kind of like, why don't we just use this? We've got drums in the band. Like, let's go back, and you can flat pick over a lot of different rhythms. It's like, let's maybe instead of a boom chuck bluegrass thing, let's put it over like an actual beat. And that was the first time I started actually having a lot of fun playing, original music. I was like, dude, I can create something I've always wanted to do. And my band's great and can do it. And that's kind of what happened.
Man, it's really cool to hear that everything you've done has been just like extremely organic and natural for you. You haven't really had stretch is the wrong word, but all this getting out of your comfort zone was a very natural process for you. It wasn't like full of angst or, this is tough. It was very normal progression.
It was. It all goes back to me just wanting to play music, and the trio kind of took shape out of me not having a gig. Yeah. I had always been I'm more of a side man. I've always thought of myself as a supporting role, which I really love, playing drums, bass. Before the trio, I was upright bass in a very traditional bluegrass band from here called Town Mountain.
So you're a drummer and a bass player and a guitarist. Yeah.
Yep.
Holy smokes. Are you self-taught on all this, or did you study music?
I took guitar lessons in high school. That's all I've really done as formal study. Yeah.
Well, and so it must be pretty intense, because bluegrass, as you said, it's not a music where you could it's one of the few genres you have to play fast. It's not like, you could be a great blues guy or rock player and you just don't play fast. That you can't be a great bluegrass player unless you're ripping, man.
Yeah. It took a while to get there. But like I said, it really just happened through hours and hours of jamming at festivals. That's what really, we'll play till we'll be upset when the sun comes up, basically, because that's when you need to go get some rest. But
right.
And it was just because as the night goes on, you play faster and faster. You get warmer and warmer. You get to this level where you're playing something you've never played in your life, and that's when I remember certain times where, I remember the moment when I came up with one of the things that I do all the time and shred solos, and it was 4 a.m. around a campfire. And I was just flowing, just going for it. And it just came out. And I was like, this is a cool new thing, and it's it's one of the things you'll hear me do it all the time now. So.
Did that come naturally, or did you have to make a mental note while you were playing to sort of okay, I've got to just.
No, it's almost like once you do the thing, it's in you.
Yeah.
You have forgotten about it, but it will come back much easier. It's like going there, getting there, and having that experience. You'll pick up your guitar the next day and not remember any of it, but it did happen.
Yeah.
Your brain and your hands did it. So then you're good. You can move forward, and that's kind of been my progression. I've practiced a lot with the metronome and played along with a lot of records, but I didn't go to school for music. Everything I've pretty much learned, I've been showed by other people or just copied and seen other people do and try to imitate it.
It's interesting you said that. I interviewed a really successful session player. He's a touring musician too, out of Ireland, actually, called Anto Drennan a while back. And he made a comment. He he goes, I once played all night. I stayed up 12 hours playing, and I was a different player after that forever. And you're kind of saying something real similar to that.
Totally. I've done that many, many nights, and I think that's it. It's huge. It's all you can. I mean, yeah, I can't. It's the reason that people like you want to ask me about what I do, because to me it seems like it's just a flow that happened. But those long nights, man, are when you make those milestone leaps, and then next thing you know, you're like, whoa, I don't know how I can do this, but I can. Man,
it's funny. I've been thinking of doing that just because I've heard this now from him, and now I've heard it from you. I'm just going to have to do something like that. I'm an average player, I'm not a great or even a good player, but I bet you if I stayed up all night playing, it would impact me the way it has. 12 hours of anything is a long time, man.
Exactly. They say that the 10,000 hour thing is totally true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially if you're having fun and you're
right.
It's like you're challenging yourself, and then you're meeting a goal, and then you're messing up, and then you're getting frustrated. Then you feel happy, and then then you throw it down and you quit. But then 30 minutes later, you come pick up your guitar again, and you played like you never have before.
That's very cool, man. You've released 4 albums, and you got 2 albums on your own. What are the most important things that you've learned about the business of music between your first album, Lions, which was a solo record that came out in 2008, and Triangular, which was your trio record that came out 8 years later in 2016? What are some lessons that you learned about the business?
Man, the business, I would say, this first thing pops into my head is, your record is only as good as the release. Right.
What do you mean by that?
If you're going to raise money, like, we did Kickstarter, we've done 2 Kickstarters, and it's a lot of work. It took me a minute to wrap my head around doing our first one, because I was like, I'm not going to ask people for money, free money. But
it wasn't free though. I mean, you gave them something in return.
But it was, I don't know, man.
It's in advance.
Everyone's doing a Kickstarter for whatever project, and the main thing that the Kickstarter really did was it kind of boosted my confidence, and it solidified a little group of people that you could look at, these 300 people that pre-ordered an album or some other stuff basically, and that funded the project, that believe in the project. And you're like, well, damn, at least 300 people think we should make this record. So You go to the record, get it to them, and then you've instantly got a 300 person fan base who has the record, who are posting online that it's a great record, and that was a huge boost for us. And so we released.
When was this?
That was Lost at Last, which, gosh, what year was it? 14 or 15 we did that.
So it was before Triangular?
Before Triangular. Yeah. Okay. Yep. So that one did really well, and it did better than we were expecting. I mean, really well is a thing, but it got a little write-up in the New York Times for it.
That's really cool, man.
All through our publicist.
Wait, you said like a little write-up in the New York Times. That's like a little write-up in the most well-read newspaper in at least this hemisphere. That's not a bad little write-up, man. I wish the New York Times would do a little write-up on my show. That would be pretty cool. Good for you, man.
Contact. But so and that was when we realized. So part of the thing that we raised money for was the release of the album, and that was to hire a publicist, an album release publicist, and then a radio publicist. And so, each one of them costs $1,000 a month. So we did it for 3 months.
Right.
And that was when I realized, oh man, this is the first album that has gotten any recognition at all, because I had released, a handful of records, three records up to that point. And I just sold them at shows. I was like, why isn't anyone like writing a review of this or something? You know,
you got to market it, man. You got to get it out there.
Yes. The main thing I learned was that if you're going to make a great record, you need to have at least some type of release strategy, because no one will hear about it if you just put it up online.
Man, can you say that again? Because that is so important, because a lot of people say, you know, hey, I made this record and I'm sick of it. But that's not the way, you know, if you have a business selling, you know, I mean, I do tons of marketing for the show. You have to market something. It has to get sold before it gets bought.
Yeah, totally. And you know, we're musicians. We got good at guitar because we sit around in our house all day by ourselves playing guitar, because we don't want to go out and party with all our friends, you know. I mean, and so the shameless self-promotion is hard for a lot of people to wrap their head around. It definitely does not come natural to me at all. I mean,
I've spoke to 400, over 400 guitar players. It doesn't come natural. Maybe one of them. So I think it's just an opposite. I don't know, it's opposite brain. Actually, it's the same side of the brain, because it's creative, but it's just not a thing.
Yeah. It's a whole other thing. And there's a moment when you realize, if you're gonna make a living at it, or even if you're even gonna get it out in front of people, you have to kind of understand that there's going to be a business side of it, and there's going to be a promotional side of it, and there's this whole other side of it that's just so much more than you playing your guitar, man. Because even the best, you know, John McLaughlin's got a publicist.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. So are you going to make the radio, the album release publicist and the radio release publicist, or one of them, a part of your standard operating routine when you drop a new record?
Well, yeah. In the past, I would say, you know, with an independent release, yeah, because if you're doing it yourself, which we've done up to this point, you have to kind of quarterback all that stuff, or have someone on as part of your team. Yeah. My wife helped me out a lot. I mean, my wife managed our project basically for the first 3 years.
That's great.
And because she has an internet, she can do emails. She has that brain, that other side of the brain. So, yeah, you got to release with a publicist, because the publicist will go to the publications, the websites, the blogs, and then the radio person will get you plays on air, which get cataloged and get translate into chart numbers and all this stuff that you don't believe it, but someday you might need to kind of show as evidence of your work. You know?
Absolutely.
It's a number in your catalog.
It's like maintaining a touring log of all the tours that you've done. And then someone's going to say, well, I want you to on this festival. What have you done before?
Yeah.
Here you go. You got to have, you know, evidence of, you know, social proof sort of. What are your hard ticket sales in top 3 markets? That was another question that really threw us for a loop when we were looking for a booking agency. You know, it's like, all right, what are your hard, you know, how many can you do in your top 3 markets? I'm like, top 3 markets. Yeah. Right. It's just,
that's when we realized, all right, let's start working our top 3 markets.
Right.
We'll go back every 3 months, and it's kind of how it works.
What are your top 3 markets?
Golly.
I'm just curious. It's not like a quiz or anything.
Well, you got your hometown, Asheville.
Right.
And then, Boulder, Denver, I would say is big for us, because I had a lot of ties out there when we were first starting to play, and it's Colorado music scene for this type of music, and pretty much everything else. It's huge, man. I mean, people out there it's like a religion. And so we started going out there second, so Boulder, Denver, and then I'd say actually for us, Florida is pretty good. Because of how much we played in
Swanee,
at the stuff at Swanee. Yeah. And so, yeah,
very cool.
That's our top 3 right now. And then we get up to Virginia a lot too, of course. So great festivals up there.
That's so cool. Do you know Gordy?
Old friend.
Yeah.
Old friend of mine from Colorado days. We did a couple duet shows back in the probably 2005, 6.
Yeah, I would think you guys are very compatible actually musically, because he's a little out there, and I mean that in a very good way. He's not doing conventional stuff, and I knew he was from Colorado. That's why I asked.
Yeah,
that's cool,
Love
man.
Grant. That's time.
Yeah. Oh, great guy. Yeah. Well, thanks for explaining all that. It was really interesting to hear. So you've really gotten schooled on this, and you sound like, as much as it's not something that you're looking forward to doing, you're fully aware of that. Hey, this is an important part of the album that we have to deal with. And even if I'm not dealing with, I got to make sure I have a team member that's on top of this.
Totally. Yeah. Your albums are important. I mean, you just got to get the album out, so invest in that, but as much as you invest in making it a good album.
Yeah. And just let me give you an example, or just the listeners, some people know this, some don't. I've run a marketing company for the last 20 years, and I've worked in 108 different industries. And let me tell you, every one of those clients I work with, they didn't just make something or have a service and all of a sudden, like that movie, If You Build It, They Will Come. That's a freaking movie, It doesn't work that way in the real world. If you got something to sell, you have to sell it before it gets bought for like 99.9% of the, of goods and services out there. All right. You grew up in Durham. What was your childhood like?
I'd venture to say really, really, really good.
That's great, man.
I'd venture to say really good. My grandparents were close by. My parents still together today. Dad worked for IBM. Mom's the director of a preschool.
Oh my God. That's like textbook.
Yeah.
Like television, man. That's great. Good for you.
Super cool. I was allowed to watch MTV. We went to church a lot, really involved in Southern Baptist church, but not super strict church, but, evangelical. So I went to mission camp and church camp and stuff like that. So got involved with a lot of music that way, but also did like a lot of community outreach and stuff like that.
Did you go overseas for that and travel?
We never did that overseas, but we did it we actually went to South Beach, Florida one time.
I mean, they're beyond many mission help you can give. That's an unreachable audience, especially in South Beach. Oh my Lord.
South Beach, man. Yeah. We left there. We're like, nah, man, there's no hope.
This is not efficient.
went up to like upstate New York and
perfect.
Near Nashville. So
that's cool, man. That's very cool.
But good, cool childhood. And Durham, North Carolina was a great place to grow up, even though it was a little, downtown was sketchy back then. It was
really,
Durham, I think was like number one in murder at one point during when I was growing for like 1 year. Yeah.
Well, you know what's weird? We went to Asheville. Ann and my wife went to Asheville, like, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, and I thought downtown Asheville was a little sketchy. Like there's a lot of homeless people there. I couldn't believe it. That's what it was really like. I was like, holy cow. And I'm from New York City, and I was like, wow, there's a lot of originally I've been living in Florida for a while, but I was shocked how many, homeless people were there, man.
Yeah. Yeah. That downtown Asheville, I think it's night and day from what it was even 10 years ago, as far as improvements.
Yeah. Okay.
But with like friendly town, it's kind of like a liberal place that you in North Carolina.
Yeah. A liberal place in North Carolina. Yeah. That's funny.
It's like a liberal island, man. I mean,
it's a blue dot in a sea of red.
Yeah. There's KKK like 2 counties over, like maybe most in the country.
Wow.
But so, yeah, but it's like a friend, it's one of those places like Boulder, Portland. It's like these friendly towns, man. It's crazy how many, it's like a homeless magnet. And it's like, it's cool because there is some love here and there's some support and there's, free meals and stuff. And it's like, we're all about love and helping, but it's different. It's crazy how you see that as you go around.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Denver was like that. I was in Denver as well. And I couldn't believe, and I talked to a lot of people that they said a lot of it was because when they legalized weed, all these kids come out there and like, oh, we want to smoke weed, but we don't want to work.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think it's like a vibe thing. It's like if it's a friendly town, it's a little easier place to kind of just live on the street.
Yeah, I think so.
Like Asheville's a pretty relatively friendly place.
It was very friendly. I mean, it was great. It was just, I was surprised. It was, there was that homelessness there. What are you looking to do more of moving forward? Because you've been in this game a little while now. Is there any sort of game plan that you have for moving forward?
Yeah. So right now, the trio is still touring full time. I want to say we maybe did 200 dates or something this year. Between 180 and 200 maybe.
Holy crap! Hold on a minute. That's massive. Did you book all those yourself?
No, we have a booking agent.
Wow! Holy smoke! That is like.
It might be closer to like I don't know, in the upper, it's like 160, 170 maybe.
Yeah, well, that's still close to 200 days out.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's a lot of days out, and it's a full-time gig for all of us. I mean, we're set up, that it's like a salary thing. Yeah. All the money goes in a pot and we get an even amount throughout the year, which is cool. That works really well for us. And
that's also very cool of you.
It's a full-time gig. So we're committed to it. All three of us, basically our schedules are roped off, but the cool thing is it's getting booked. It gets booked out. So there's a point where the other two band members can fill in with other gigs, and, they both play tons of shows around locally. So it's not like this is the only gig you can do, but you need to
commit to this, but after this, you're free to do whatever you want. That's right. Exactly. Do you write all the music?
Right now, yep. But as far as the other thing, it's like, this is our full-time thing. This is how we're making our living. But everyone's free to do other things. And one thing I want to do is, we all like being a part of different projects. It's like this music, even for me, it's instrumental, it's progressive, it's creative, but that's one thing that we all enjoy, but we all have a lot of other things we want to do too. So I'd like to get into some other projects when I finally have time for it. So I think as this full-time gig progresses, hopefully it will be something that we don't have to do quite as much as we're doing it right now, and can free up some time for other things we want to do.
Good for you, man. That's
I'd like to play some more traditional music. Now, after doing this full time, it's like, it's kind of making me want to get back and play some like hardcore bluegrass.
Really? That's interesting.
And maybe just get in some different settings, work with some other people. I mean, like I said, I got into this for fun and playing music. So I'm very happy with the trio. It's extremely fulfilling, but love playing music with everybody. So
I'm smelling you and Grant Gordy at Sonny's in Brooklyn, man.
I don't know if I can keep up with him these days.
Man, everybody pays tuition and makes mistakes. Any mistakes you made early on that you learned from, that you're open or comfortable sharing?
Mistake. I think a mistake that I still make sometimes is maybe just not believing in myself enough, and not being confident enough that what I'm doing is good, because I think back, if I had that from the beginning, I would have probably jumped on a lot more opportunities that I might have just didn't feel like was quite worth it, or it's like, I'm just getting to a point now where I'm starting to feel like, hey, maybe this is relevant. This is cool. It's meaningful, and it's having a positive effect on other people. And so I feel like, like with gigs and stuff that I did in the past, I didn't really, kind of just took what was there because didn't quite want to like totally believe in myself to do what I wanted to do. And so, that's something.
Thank you, man. That was really kind of you to be so candid. Do you think it was because you were doing something that was new and trend setting and you were sort of like experimenting, or?
Yeah, maybe. And, I think part of it is like, uh, I never even, like with doing music, like I didn't go to school for it. I never really, growing up, thought of it as something that you could actually do. I
Gotcha.
think that's something a lot of us go through is like, it's almost like I knew I was gonna need to get a plan B
Right.
at some point. I just never did. So I wasn't thinking about music as like, my goal is to go for music and be a musician and rock out. Like it just was something I did because I loved it so much. And it ended up paying the bills after a while. And it was just another thing. I was like, man, I love it so much. I'm not going to do anything else. And, yeah.
Well, man, let me just tell you this. A couple of things, if it has any impact on you. Number one, age is going to fix some of that. As you get older, you just seem to sort of like growing, you just get more confident and less, to be frank, less caring about what other people are thinking, and the second thing is, yeah, for sure. And the second thing is, and I've worked with loads of clients over the years, and there's no expert fairy out there for any of us. There's no, oftentimes, because I understand exactly what you're saying, where I wasn't sure, you almost like, did I have the right to be doing this? There's no expert fairy for anybody in any profession. There's nobody that comes through and, this magic fairy that comes into your office or your studio and says, anoints you, said, hey man, you can go out and do this for anybody. So you just got to take the bull by the horns and declare yourself the expert, even if you don't believe it, man.
That's good advice, man. I mean, dude, it's taken a long time for me to kind of get my head around that one.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, for a third thing, for whatever, I listened to you and I'm like, wow, this guy's a freaking amazingly talented dude. And I guarantee you, anybody that's listening to this show, everybody listen to Jon Stickley and email him and tell him what a badass he is. We'll get this done together, John. No, but I really appreciate you being candid, because I think a lot of people, I went through that in my career earlier, for sure, man. You're like, people are paying me, so I totally, it's like, really? Yeah. So I totally get that, man.
It's happened naturally. And so I think it's because it wasn't an intentional thing from the get-go. It's just been kind of like you said, it's been a totally organic thing from the very beginning.
That's great, man. Well, that's what you're supposed to be doing then. When you practice, do you steer more towards one genre over another?
Not really. Usually with practice, there's a few different, with everybody, there's a few different things. It's like one of the things that I end up playing the most is working on just basic traditional bluegrass techniques, like flat picking wildwood flower, doing really kind of simple, easy things, trying to perfect them as much as I can. It's like when I'm sitting around the house, I'm playing like Clarence White style bluegrass out of the key of C.
Okay.
And I spent a lot of time just doing that, just kind of getting honed in, warming up and stuff. And then other things that really help me out as far as like working on techniques is anyone who kind of does flat picking. Like, I know, have you talked to Julian Lodge?
I have not. I talked to Chris Grant and Brian Sutton and Rebecca Frazier, and there's got to be another bluegrasser in there somewhere.
Those are all good friends of mine, and they're all people I've looked at and talked to about different techniques. And it's basically anyone like using a flat pick on the guitar is a cool thing to kind of study. So something that really opened my mind as far as harmonically was Gypsy Jazz, Django Reinhardt.
Yeah. John Jorgensen?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I interviewed John. He's what a talented guy that dude is.
He studied so hard at mastering exactly what Django did with the two fingers and everything. And so, his right hand technique, it's not that far off from Chris Thiele and all these other experts in our world. And there's a little bit of video you can watch, and I'm like, oh man, that looks just like David Greer's hand or something. And so looking at people that use flat picks like that, and then seeing how they use scales and the neck in different ways that are way outside of like what bluegrass is, and then trying to kind of bridge those gaps. So it's like, after a while, it got kind of easy for me to hybridize, like, okay, this Django lick fits right into this Tony Rice lick, you know, and you can hear Tony did a lot of that stuff too. It's kind of like how the styles develop, but Gypsy Jazz for me has been a really interesting thing to study as far as getting outside of the bluegrass flat picking thing.
Man, you're a very committed student. That's really interesting.
Well,
really cool.
I mean, pretty much self-taught since high school, but then with the trio and having to do this and having to write material and stuff, it's like you got to find things that open your brain a little bit, because a lot of the time I feel pretty stuck in my ideas. And so I'll look out. Another thing I like looking at is like some of the shred metal stuff, alternate picking and sweeping and stuff. I mean, it's all done with a flat pick, and it can all be done on acoustic guitar. I mean, the physicality is a lot different. So that's not an excuse, because some people can do it on acoustic guitar. So I'm not saying I can't, but some of those other weird techniques from other genres really can help you open up your brain as far as acoustic music, you know.
Which guys from metal are you looking at, or do you typically study, or have you studied?
Jeez. Who's that guy I look at? I haven't studied that. I mean, not studied, but there's like Paul Gilbert.
Yeah.
Sean Lane is another guy I love. Shoot. It's like, you know, I don't really listen to the style of music, but it's like I hop on YouTube and find like tutorials from those guys. It's really cool. And a lot of them are hilarious too. There's like there's this classical guy. He does a thing called Pumping Nylon. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. No. It's a web series, Pumping Nylon. And I started doing techniques off of that recently. And my wife's like, dude, you're going to drive me crazy with that shit. Cause it's like, it's all counterpoint licks, you know, and it's like doing two things at once, and it really messes up your brain. But it's so good for you. It's so cool.
Is she a musician, your wife?
No, she's not.
Okay. Gear. What's your go-to guitar right now? And I know acoustic guys don't tend to have a bunch of different guitars, but if you do, what are your top three of guitars?
Yeah, that's I've always been a low instrument playing number, but it's purely financial.
Most acoustic people are the same way. Well, even like I just got out you ever heard of this guy Peppino D'Agostino? He's out in California. He's a great fingerstyle guy, and he's been doing this super successfully. He's got two guitars, but they're signature guitars, and that's all he plays. So, and he could have 100 guitars.
So basically, my go-to right now. So for the first 18 years of my career, I played a 1956 D18, and that's kind of my guitar. It's got like a really, really cool dark finish on it. And it's all beat up, and it's got that like classic bluegrass look. And a friend of mine sold it to me when I was in college. And this friend of mine, Jamie Griggs, he went on to be kind of a big trader of vintage Martin guitars. This was the first one he ever bought, was the 1960 D18. And I was wanting a nicer guitar than I had a 88 Martin D28 that I loved, but I wanted a vintage guitar. And so he said, look, man, I want to get this 1935 D28. And I said, I'd never sell my 56, but if you want it, I'll sell it to you. I was like, well, I don't have any money. And he's like, well, how about you go ahead and take it, and just, you can make payments on it. I'll sell it to you for what I got it for, $2,500.
Oh, that's a great deal, man.
I was in college. So yeah, I eventually paid it off to him, and that was my main guitar that I've always played. And later on, same dude, Jamie Griggs Guitars, started building, and he's built a lot of guitars now, and a lot of people have bought them and play them. And I was wanting to, 2 years ago, I needed to get some repair work done on the D18, and it really was just starting to need a break, because of it had so many, it's like lots of cracks, fret job, nut, saddle. It pretty much need like everything done.
60 years old piece of wood.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, like I said, a lot of long nights. So Jamie gave me one of the guitars that he built, and it's a Griggs guitar. It's an African Blackwood back and sides, and Italian spruce top. And it's pretty much like a pre-war Martin copy, but it's got a little bit of a Gibson hybrid kind of shape and bracing to it. It's a total hoss, man, and it works great for the trio because it's got a lot of low end since we don't have a bass.
That's great.
And I freaking love this guitar so much.
Layaway? Layaway?
Yeah. No, yeah. I've got one more on order, actually.
From Griggs?
No, from Thompson, Preston Thompson out in Sisters, Oregon. So that'll probably be ready like in April. But then I will officially have 3 guitars.
Good for you, man.
Hopefully I'll love every single one of them, because
I'm sure you will.
The Martin and the Griggs, they're just on fire right now.
Good for you, man. That's nice. This sounds, sounds like you really appreciate those guitars, man.
Definitely. And I think for me, I mean, people switch around a lot sometimes, but for me, it's like, it takes me a long time to get to know an instrument and there's so much muscle memory involved with flat picking. Like it's like you have your hands and your body have to take a long time to get used to playing it to where I can be 100% comfortable. Like I can't go back and forth between these 2 guitars very well.
Sure.
And that might just be me. I mean, for me, it just takes a long time to kind of get into where I feel like, comfortable enough on each guitar.
No, I think most players are like that. I mean, this is not a sexist. I don't mean this in any sexist way, but guitar is like a woman in the sense that, if you're going to get chemistry with, or whatever your flavor is, you're going to get chemistry with a human being. It doesn't happen in a day or a week. It's over time, and it's understanding the relationship. And it's the same I find with an instrument.
Totally.
Anybody that influences you that people would be surprised to hear?
I guess everyone knows I'm a big punk fan, but Billy Joe from Green Day is one of my biggest heroes.
That's cool, man.
And not just the songs, but his actual guitar playing. I'm sure a lot of people are going to write that off or turn the podcast off right now. But
no, hey man, that guy's been pretty freaking successful. He's got a good sound going.
I really like it. I think energy is a big thing for me. So, and where I feel like the energy of the music that I heard in the 90s, it was just, a lot of it was so over the top and fast and up, and like the skate punk thing. That's something that I've really carried with me. And like the music of the trio has a lot of that at times. And it's not something you're not going to say, hey, that sounds like Green Day, but it's like, no, it's played in such a balls out way. It's like when they took the stage, Woodstock 94, I still go back and watch that show. It's definitely worth a watch on YouTube.
You ever listen to Helmet when you were growing up?
Not really, no.
They're a very high energy band. Incredibly, they were like Green Day was more alternative. Helmet was like a little more what I'd call hardcore for then, not hardcore now. And I had Paige Hamilton, their main guitar player and leader of the band, on the show, and I remember I was walking through a record store downtown in the East Village, I think, and I heard this come on. I'm like, what the hell is this, man? And that was what I was turned on to. The energy was just explosive, and I didn't really dig that music. I was like, God, I've got to check this. I mean, so I totally get that, man. Energy is so important.
And like Bill Monroe, Ralph Stanley, they've got that same explosive energy if you go back and listen to their earliest stuff. But even through their later career, it's raw and it's just rocking, man.
Well, to me, I think that's what music is. It's a transfer of energy, and like that's when you go to a good concert, the musicians have successfully transferred energy over to you, you know, and when you go to a bad concert, they haven't, you know, so I'm all about that, man. I totally get it. John, first record, if you remember, not record, first CD you ever purchased.
I can remember the first albums I bought. I got the same trip. It was Nirvana, Nevermind, and Smells Like Nirvana, Nevermind, and Blood Sugar Sex Magic, Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Oh, dude, that was
on tape. On tape, and I went and like. Then I went over to I think maybe I was with my grandma. Like we have gone to the mall and I bought those and I showed her what I bought and she was like, "Oh,
your parents are going to be angry with me."
Blood Sugar Sex Magic. Okay.
Yeah, that's not coming up in a sermon at the Southern Pentecostal.
The naked baby underwater, like swimming after a dollar bill. So, but of course, you know, I was allowed to listen to it, and I'm so glad I did. I mean, I'll never forget that Blood Sugar Sex Magic had a huge fold out tape cover that was like, it was basically a huge collage of all their tattoos, like a picture of every one of the tattoos of all the band members. And this really kind of stuck with me as a fourth grader.
Did you get a bunch of tattoos?
I don't have a single tattoo yet, man.
Me neither. Don't feel bad.
Yeah.
It's funny. Both those albums were like very, you know, genre defining records. You know,
I'll never forget them, man. I mean, I still listen to those albums a lot, but yeah.
It's funny. When my sons were younger, I had the Nirvana Nevermind, you know, poster of the album cover in their room, and one of them I'm sure still has it because they were talking about it. Just like I think of Thanksgiving or something, they were talking to me about it. It's funny enough. So, Desert Island Discs, man, no particular order.
Number one's got to be Tony Rice. Tony Rice sings Gordon Lightfoot.
That's interesting.
Tony is like, I guess he'd be my favorite guitarist, but Tony. Also the albums he produced and stuff, it's just incredible. And one of the things that he always worked with was all these great musicians. And then throughout his career, he did a lot of Gordon Lightfoot material on different albums. Like he'd have one or two Gordon Lightfoot songs on every album. And so this is a compilation by Rounder Records of all the Tony Rice Gordon Lightfoot tracks. So it kind of spans his career. It's a really great listen. And I already used it one time when I went to Alaska in college. I did a summer in Alaska with the state parks. And it was I took like 2 CDs. I took that and I took Andy Statman, Andy's Ramble, which is a great mandolin album. And I took those 2 albums and they got me through the whole summer. Like, and I could have gone longer, like, cause they're so good and so well done. And you can just listen deeper and deeper every time.
Man, that was a pretty cool experience going away to Alaska for a summer.
Yeah. I studied, to be a park ranger in college. So I have my degree in that. And then, lived in a cabin in Alaska with my roommate who was up there from Illinois, and all I took was my mandolin at the time.
That's wild.
I was just like, you know, it's small.
Yeah.
I could run around in the woods, and I would take walks through the woods playing mandolin, and it was definitely a life-changing thing for me.
Very cool. Where'd you go to school?
NC State, Raleigh, North Carolina.
Yeah, that's very cool.
And then the third album, gosh, I don't know. It's tough. I want to say something in a non-bluegrass. You know, I might just say more Tony Rice, man. Those Tony Rice albums, dude. Like, it's the only music I can kind of always listen to. Like, whatever mood I'm in, if I'm like upset, sad, like angry, frustrated, happy, that's the only thing I can put on every time.
Fixes you up.
You know how it's hard? It's like, man, what do I want to listen to right now? You put something on, you're like, that doesn't work.
I do know. That's cool.
And the different albums, you know, he's got the Church Street Blues is just him and guitar. It's like totally good for other times.
Very cool, man. It's funny. Your comfort zone is always set, or not always, often set from where you grow up. Like, you know, you grew up in Durham, and you're very comfortable in the forest and the woods. I was scared shitless just listening to you say that. I'd be like out of my mind there. You know, I grew up in the Bronx, and I'd be like, if there's no people, no, I'm way out of my comfort zone, man.
You want to go walk around the Alaska woods playing your mandolin?
No, I would watch the video. It looks very pretty, man. But I would just be freaking out like someone's gonna creep out of here and I got no out, you know, unless so it's just weird. And like my wife's from a little village in England, so we're in New York one day and she's like, oh my God, is this dangerous? I'm like, no, there's tons of people. It's not dangerous. And like normal people that don't grow up in a nutty environment like that are like, get me out of here, you know? So I totally get it. I mean, I appreciate that stuff. It's beautiful. And, but I don't know that I'd be comfortable doing it. I'd like to do it. I'd need you as a park ranger guide, man. You know, that's what I need.
Something about the mandolin too. It was like animals didn't recognize that sound. It wasn't, but they also didn't trigger like alarm. So just me just noodling around, I think I ended up being right next to like a grouse, or I even got pretty close to a moose one time who just didn't know how to react to what it was hearing, cool. until I got close and I stopped and like, oh my God. And then we figured out, and then we both ran away from each other.
Yeah. I love animals. That's one thing I really do appreciate, having grown up in the city. I love animals, nature, and that I'm really turned on by, but I need like human beings sort of like, you know, I always think of deliverance and shit like that, you know.
Oh, yeah.
My ignorance, not anybody else's. Man, it's a tough question. What do you like most about yourself?
I would say, it's something that it gets down to some of the questions, we talked about earlier, like, or stuff about like what you learned from your parents kind of thing. And, I'd say maybe the thing I like the most about myself, and this is also a thing my wife gets on me for sometimes, is just be kind and respectful and nice to everybody. You know, that's kind of something it's always kind of come natural to me, and I've liked it. And sometimes it's like there's people you come across in life that you really should not be nice to. You know, and that's something that I've kind of had a hard time learning and figuring out when to do. So, but ultimately, it's like I learned that from my parents, and they just were like, "Man, be cool and nice and friendly to everybody." And that's one thing I do see in myself as probably a good trait.
Man, that's a great trait. Well, that's a great trait for sure, man. Best childhood memory?
Going to New York City for the first time. Staying in the Times Square Marriott.
Man, I've stayed there dozens of times. That's the Marriott Marquis.
Marriott Marquis business trip. Dad
with IBM.
Yep, IBM.
That's really cool, man. What did you like? What did you like most about the city? Now, did you feel out of your element there?
You know, it felt to me like going to an amusement park or something.
It is like an amusement park.
Yeah. I mean, dude, Times Square and like
that especially. Yeah. That whole area.
Seeing everything and the humanity and the over the topness of it. It's coming from Durham, North Carolina. It was more exciting to me than like Disney World or something like that.
It's pretty weird.
It's like dirty and gross and sticky too.
Like, and when did you go? It's clean now, man. You should have seen it in the 70s. Good Lord, man. Holy smoke. It's pristine now.
I've been recently, but yeah. I mean, back then it was like probably the 90s, maybe 95, 96, 94, 95, 96.
That's funny, man.
I'll just never forget that, man. We went, Dad would always like go on business trips. And we would sometimes go along as like a family vacation. Yeah. He would work and we'd do some fun stuff. But we went to like France, and California a couple times. So we got to do some cool traveling. But that family trip up there, walking around, just walking around crazy New York City with the family, going up the Twin Tower, going up in the Statue of Liberty.
I actually worked in the Twin Towers when I was a kid. I was 14. Tower number 2 on the 69th floor. Yeah.
Wow.
It was a trip. It was a trip. And the whole interior of the building was covered with asbestos because it wasn't built yet. And that I always thought was weird. I was a young kid. I was just 14, so.
That's not healthy.
No, not healthy.
But I still get the same. I mean, that feeling comes back when we drive into the city now to play shows. Like, I'm like, man, we got to pay to be here. We're not getting anything out of this show, but I it's like so worth it.
Where do you play when you go there?
We've done a few different things. We did like Rockwood Music Hall.
Oh, sure.
A place where a lot of my peers play. So
Campolongo's got a standing gig there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then we did Union Hall in Brooklyn. Some small clubs up there, basically.
Yeah. There's not much else to play there anymore, to be honest with you. There's not, there's a small handful of clubs only. There's a lot of them closed down.
Yeah. Well,
that's cool, man. Well, next time you go there, if you get some time, let me know. I'll give you some places to go where you can eat like a king and not spend $100 for breakfast or lunch. Tell me something about yourself that people would be surprised to hear or might find a little odd.
When I'm not on the road, I'm a total domesticated house husband. I do all grocery shopping, laundry, and cooking.
Your wife probably really appreciates that.
She does.
That's cool, man. That's really.
She's a kindergarten teacher.
You know what? I think that's so tough to do because, especially a guy like you, you're out 200 days a year. I've never walked in your shoes, but I would imagine when you come home, being normal, like going food shopping, is weird.
It's weird, but it's also, for me, it's like my therapy from that, because the road gigs, just talking to people, being in front of people, it's pretty taxing for me. I mean, I'm not a natural like A personality. I'm pretty shy, and so being out in the world, moving around all day long, and then being out all night in these highly social situations, it wears me. I love it, but it wears me out, so that when I get home, I'm happy to I like totally hole up, and like my bandmates go out and play gigs. I'm like, y'all are crazy.
Yeah. You need a detox. Because you're stressed out in a sense when you're not stressed out, but it's outside of your comfort zone. So it is a little anxiety producing. I totally understand that, man.
Cook healthy food and
good for you. That's awesome, man. You mentioned your mom and dad. What is the most important thing they both taught you?
Yeah, I think I mentioned that earlier, man. Just like,
oh yeah, you said be kind.
Respect everyone and be kind, and you treat others like you would want to be treated, and especially if you see someone who isn't doing well, kind of just keep an eye out for other people that might need help. That was something that kind of got instilled in me at an early age, and I think that's kind of led me to a lot of cool people over the years.
Talk about a specific example that changed your life, a specific experience, that changed your life or altered the way you think about things.
I would say, so when I was, I guess it was my third year of college, the summer before I was going to graduate. No, it was after I went to Alaska. So it was my final year of college. The summer after that, I was either going to be a missionary or go to Colorado and join a bluegrass band. And I remember sitting in school, and one day I remember the exact class I was in. It was entomology, and I was just sitting there and I was like, man, I gotta play music. It's just, everything else will work out, but I've got to take this opportunity to play music. I was like, I want to be playing music right now. Like, I want to play music the rest of my life. So, of course, it wasn't a big plan at the time, but it was an opportunity that I had. And that day I made the call. I was like, yeah, I'll come out and we'll do the gig. So I moved out to Durango, Colorado for the first time. And the people I met that summer, it was just the first time I'd ever gone west. And I met the people that lived out there, and it really changed my life. I never met adults that were like cool and happy and just like had fun, It's like living like I don't know, I guess it's like a post hippie lifestyle, but where everyone it was always such a like, adults were serious, successful people, religious people. And I was on a path to grow up and follow in those footsteps. And it was like living in Colorado for that summer was the first time I'd actually lived and hung out with other people, where it really opened my eyes to just a different way of kind of looking at the world and other people and life. So that put me on the track I'm on right now. And that's why I'm here pretty much. So
man, again, I really give you a lot of credit for being open to that and getting out of what might have been a comfort zone, or getting out of not being afraid to violate or expectations to deviate to because you had your heart was pure, and so it was you probably felt it was the right thing to do, and I give you credit though. That's not always easy.
Yeah. I didn't know if it was the right decision at the time. I mean, it was just like I just knew that's what I had to do, and I did it, and it was a huge life changer for me.
Were your folks okay with that?
Yeah,
they supported that. That is very cool.
They've always been extremely supportive of everything I do, but there have been times, and they've told me now, since now we're a little older and stuff, that they were like, it's just an adjustment for us. Yeah. Like, we don't know any other people who are professional musicians. We don't have any other friends whose kids are professional musicians. Sure. But then they're like, but you do, people who are professional musicians who are adults. Like it's something new we've had to kind of get used to. And so,
but I get it honestly, as an outsider, I could give a lot of credit to them for supporting you in that. Because oftentimes people that are in a certain path that where there's a lot of structure, like corporate work, church, those are very structured, experiences, and continuing in those paths are very structured, that they were cool with you not participating in that. That was very, very cool of them to be open and to support you. And they trusted you, which is really nice.
Yeah. Yep. They're very, very cool.
That's great, man.
And it's been for me too, like you said, the structured life, the structured world, and the structured order of things. I've been just moving along in that all the way through college. And that's after college that's when I kind of veered off. And even now, looking at my life, it's kind of like, oh man, it can be kind of overwhelming, as to like, it's all resting on me and my musical abilities. Like it's really scary.
Don't think about that.
Yeah.
No, seriously.
It's just like,
just do your thing.
I'm not part of a big corporation that, that has, clout or has resources that I can draw on at any time. It's like, but that's all just like, I know that's BS, right? Because you can get screwed over by your corporate job any day, right?
Anybody who works themselves has to deal with what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
Anybody, you happen to be a musician, but anybody that's self-employed has to deal with it.
Right. It's still, it's like, oh my God, like I'm a small business owner.
Yeah, you are.
Like, that's a lot of every now and then. I mean, feels like a lot of pressure, especially when you get married and now we're talking about family and life's moving forward. It's like, okay, like you're having fun, but shit's getting real.
Yeah, just take it one day at a time, man. You're a really smart guy. And I mean, honestly, I'm not just saying that to blow smoke. You're a really smart together guy. And, you've made really good decisions. It appears to me anyway.
All right, cool.
From me and Linus and the peanut gallery here. Last question, man. Is there anything you regret not doing?
Yeah, regret not doing. There is we talked about Critter Eldridge. When he probably talked to you about this. I didn't get a chance to hear the podcast yet, but there was a time when he helped start the band, the infamous String Dusters. And then he left that project to go join the Punch Brothers.
Yeah, that was the most difficult decision he's had to make, actually. That's what he said.
Yeah, I know it was. And I was basically in a band with their bass player was in the band that I moved to Colorado to join, the String Dusters bass player.
Okay. So
I got to know Chris and everybody through that. And when Chris left, he actually called me and was like, you should take my place in the String Dusters. And then shortly after that, Travis, the bass player, offered to, have me join or at least audition and stuff. And at the time they were like building a career long, like they were trying to build a brand and a career long commitment from, whoever was going to join. And at the time it was too scary for me. I was like, I don't want to like move to Nashville. I don't want to uproot my life. And I don't want to do that much. I'm kind of like still just doing this for fun. And so ended up not doing it. And they got a perfect fit. Andy Falco, who's the man. But that is one thing that I do now because of where I am in life. Like it forced me to kind of go out on my own and not be a part of that. But that's a decision I do look back at sometimes when I'm feeling like broke or something. And I'm like, man, wow, that might have been something that would have been a really cool thing to be a part of, and it was just one of those things that now I know not doing it was the right decision, but for many years I questioned that, and I would venture to say maybe I did make the wrong choice on that one, but just weird thing how life goes.
Yeah. Well, man, I really enjoyed talking to you. You're a pleasure, man. You're very honest and open, and anything I could do to support your music, let me know, man, because I think the world of you as a player and now as a person. And
I really appreciate it, Craig.
Let me tell people where to find you. Please check out and support Jon Stickley's music. It's Jon, Jon Stickley, Stickley. He's got a great website. It's jonstickley.com. And the trio is going to be touring all throughout the country next year in 2019. Or this year, by the time this will drop, 2019. I would encourage you to go to the show, say hello to Jon, check out the music. It's really great. It's really cool. He's an amazing player, and he's a really awesome guy, as you heard. And also, he's on social media, Jon Stickley Trio. You could find him at Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and hit him up on all those and tell him you enjoyed the interview and you come out and see him on the road. And hopefully late 2019, the new record will be dropped, and hopefully you come on here and we can talk about it.
Love to.
Man, any final words of wisdom?
Come see the trio, because you'll knock your socks off. But also, if you're an aspiring player, just keep at it, man. Play as much as you can and make sure you're having fun while you're doing it, because that's all I did. Just play it as much as possible for fun. But you'll eventually challenge yourself and you'll get there. Absolutely, man. And go out in the woods and play to find a moose. Everybody, Jon, thank you so much for everything, man. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this interview, please share it with a friend on your social media channels. Thanks again to Jon Stickley for spending time with us. I really appreciate it. Everybody support Jon and check out his music. It's Jon Stickley, JONSTICKLEY. Make sure you go to everyonelovesguitar.com, sign up to get on our newsletter list so you and I can connect. And most important, remember that happiness is a choice, so choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have fun. That's what it's all about. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I'm out. We hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, subscribe to the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, and you can do this online at everyonelovesguitar.com or on iTunes. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star positive review. The more 5-star reviews we get, the higher our show ranks, and higher rankings mean we get to continue speaking with cool, interesting guests on our show. We'll see you on the next episode, and until then, keep playing your guitar and have fun making music.